Hello, my name is Jeff Suen, and I'm here to talk to you today about our web apps, and specifically the Microsoft Dynamics Web Apps release for December 2016. A number of new features have been added in this 2016 release, and this session is geared towards letting you understand what those changes are, how they might impact you, and if needed, what are the settings that you need to think about in order to turn on or off these new features. So the first area that we're going to talk about today is in the time card entry area. Now the first came through a series of requests to change the number of clicks that are needed to get to the entry of your data in the time card entry screen. Currently, if you're on a previous version, you have to click on the New Row button, which would bring up a sub-menu where you choose whether you wanted to choose projects that have been assigned to you or have not been assigned to you. A couple things came from that. Obviously, it's 2 clicks to get to where you want to get, so we wanted to remove that. Secondly, assigned and unassigned didn't make quite as much sense. If you weren't able to actually go into the unassigned area and choose any project, then the labels did not quite sync up with exactly what they meant. So what's changed? What's new? Well, now there are 2 buttons, and those buttons are both located on the main time card entry screen. There is a My Projects button and a Projects button. The My Projects button will take you to a list of those assigned projects. So it's the same idea as the Assign button. But again, an idea, it's the projects that have been assigned to me, so I know exactly which ones I'm choosing. The other button, instead of having to use the unassigned buttons, we're going to let you look at all the projects that are out there. So that project buttons will take you to the same area as the old unassigned projects button. So again, we've removed a click, we've gotten you to the information quicker, and we relabeled them to make a little more sense to you. Now the most common thing we get after the fact is, okay, now you've added those buttons, what if I want to actually hide one of them? What does that mean? Well, let's say, for example, at my company, we don't use My Projects. We don't assign people to projects. People can choose whatever projects they want. Well, I'd like to actually disable the My Projects button, and that's been included in the product. No longer do you have to customize it to turn off any of this button. So in this particular case, there is a setting, and what we took advantage of is something inside of Dynamics SL's project area called the Control Parameter Maintenance screen. And what it allows us to do is to create our own control code. In this case, it's the Disable Time Card My Project button code that we've created, and we put in the value N or Y. N meaning, no, I don't want to disable it, leave it as is, leave that displayed on the screen. Or Y, yes, you know what, I would like you to disable it, and it will no longer display that button on the screen. Pretty straightforward, something that you set up inside of your rich client once, and then the web apps will start using that functionality. Same idea here. We also have the idea of being able to disable the projects button as well, so we can go through and turn off the projects the same way. Instead of using the disable My Project button, it's disabling the project button. So same idea, 2 different areas. Again, now we can turn on My Projects or turn on or off My Project as well as projects. Now another common request we had is that once you have the project button open, some people would like to be able to add some additional information. As you're probably familiar with, when you're going ahead and selecting a project or editing a project, the only fields that are required would be your project and your task button. Some people said, well, you know what? It would really help my end users know which project or task to choose based on whether they knew exactly which customer was involved with that project. So now when you choose a project and task, the customer will now can display at the bottom as well as any contract information. So how did we turn on those fields? Well, same idea as we had before. Again, same screen. The new control code is Show Time Card Edit Customer. Out of the default will be that the value will be turned off and set to N. So if it's set to N, it will not display that new customer field. If you change that value to Y, then it will start showing up on the Edit and Select screen. Same idea with the contracts. If we go into the same area, if we click on that same, again, different control code, Show Time Card Edit Contract. Again, it will default to N, meaning it will not display on the screen. But if we choose yes, it will display. Now, a key point here, just to go back one, these are view-only fields. These are not made to be edited or be able to allow you to make changes to them. So they're strictly there for informational purposes to help an end user understand, okay, is this the right project or task that I've chosen? Now, another thing, and this isn't a fix that's been out there, but I did want to point out the fact that you can, in the editing of a project or the selecting of a project to put your time against, you can take it down to the bare minimums, meaning I can have it so it just displays the project and task. So the screen has been fixed so it will allow you to just show you those things. Now, Jeff, I like the idea of being able to turn off all those things. How can I do that? Well, we've added that. I've added a screenshot here of just the two areas inside of Dynamics SL where you can take care of that. One is inside of the Rich Client in the Time and Expense Setup screen under the Project Flex Time tab. Now, these is an old feature that's been out there, and we are taking advantage of the fact that it allowed you to turn off a lot of those fields. You also have the ability to show them, but make them display only, and so forth. And for the fields that are now on the project time entry that did not get included in that screen, we've also added them under your administration, under your access rights. So go into the access rights, go ahead and pull up either a group or a user, pull up that specific group or user, and then one of the areas that you'll be choosing is the Project Time Card Entry Web App, or as it's listed here in the letters MDTMTCE. When you load that into the screen, then it will show you a list of the fields that you can actually get involved with and change. So what you'll be able to do in this particular case is be able to turn off certain fields, making them visible or non-visible, or making them enabled or disabled. And then you can even take some of those fields and make them required. So what you'll be able to do is really you have control as to how your users will interact with that, and whether that's something they need to see or not, or whether you want to be able to make those fields required or not. So great functionality built into the core product that really makes you make the time entry screen work the way that you need to have it at your company. Now, the next enhancement around time cards is around the number of lines to display on a page. Now, interestingly enough, I think this information used to be hard-coded into the screen, meaning that you only had a certain number of fields that would display. And what I meant by that is if you are loading in a certain time card or expense, time card in this particular area, when you loaded in the time card, it would only load in about 5 line items at a time. Now, if you needed more than that, well, that wasn't something that it would do out of the box. Well, what we've done now is we've now let you to define that in your system. How many line items would you like to display? Anywhere from, you could say 1 if that's what you need, all the way up to 20 line items to display per page. Now, let's take a step back. What does that mean? Well, generally when you're doing your data entry into the screen, it will show as many line items as you put into the system, so you don't need to worry about that during initial data entry. But as you save and bring up that at a later time, well, that's when things change, and that's where that number comes into play. So if I'm generally putting time cards in that are 10 or 15 line items long, I might not want to have to page between each of those pages, and that's where we see down at the bottom of the screen the 1 and the 2. That's saying basically I'm going to page between the different areas that we have. Well, again, setting that line into 20 will mean that it will load 20 line items on a page at a time, and then you can go ahead and if you need it and you have more than 20 line items, it will page between them. Now, how do we set that? Okay, common theme here. Same screen. The control code is grid time card lines. Makes sense. And I'll go ahead and allow you to type in a number between 1 and 20, and then allows you to save that. Again, once that is saved, then any time card going forward will use that information. Next are some items around the approvals of time cards, and it was really more around consistency. Being able to set and lay out the screens to be very similar. So whether you're doing line item approval or doc approvals, the buttons are in the same area, the items that make sense are in the same type of area. So we've made some adjustments to make that make a lot more sense to the people that are doing approving. Now let's next go ahead and jump into expense entry. So what do we have there? Well, similar to what we had over in the time entry, we have the exact same functionality here over here in expense entry. But the nice thing about it too is you can define a different number for your expense line items versus your time. Again, what does this mean again? It means that when I load in a expense report at a later time, how many line items can I display on a page at one time? Again, the setting underneath here under control parameter, this is grid project expense lines. This value here between 1 and 20 will go ahead and decide when you load an expense report into the system, how many lines will be displayed. Next is some additional little small enhancements, but something that makes a lot of sense. In the expense report lookup field, now we have added the date. So we've always had the status, what's the type of it, what's the description if there is one. Now we have the report date, which makes it a lot easier. So if I start putting my expenses in on Monday and I come back, a week later, or I put it a week ago when I just got back from my travel and it's now getting close to the end of the month, well, which one was I working on? Maybe I started multiple ones. I can see exactly which date. So I can look at it on the screen. I can even search by report date. So I can go ahead and put in the date and have it come up and bring me the expense report that I'm looking for. The next thing is a really nice one. A good feature that we've added for expenses is the idea of impersonating another user. Well, doesn't sound too good, but what does that mean? Well, at a very high level, really what it means is that if you are potentially a department head or you're maybe an administrative assistant whose job is to put in expense for other people, let's say your boss in this case, you now have the capability to do that remotely. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that I can go in, and if you look on the screen, you'll notice that there is a employee ID field. Now, in the standard screen, when you open it up, this field is grayed out, meaning there's no way you can edit it, and this lookup list would not be available to you. But now, because I've turned on this feature, it is enabled. I can click on the button, do a lookup list, choose someone else, and be able to put my the expenses in for another user. So a great bit of functionality there. Now, how do we turn this one on? A little bit differently. What we've done is inside of SL, we've created a group called Expense Entry Admins, as you can see listed on the screen. All you need to do to be able to give people access to it is go into the group maintenance screen, go to the Expense Entry Admin, and type in the user ID of the person that you'd like to be able to do that. By assigning them to that group, when they go into web apps, they will then have the ability inside the expense entry screen to be able to turn that on and start entering expenses for other people. So you do have that functionality. Let's move on to some approvals. We showed another one earlier. Some other things here all around the document and approval for expenses, as well as I showed earlier for the time entry approvals. Again, just more consistency, making it look very similar to each other so it's got a consistent look and feel, whether you're doing line item approval or document approval. Some additional fields that we've added for approvals, the due employee amount was missing. We can see it here in the detail area and above in the header, so you have both of that information available to someone who's doing the approval. Next, under the budget area. Now, if you were doing budgets where you needed revisions and you had in the original screen, and I think it does still work this way in the Rich Client, to be able to view each of the different budget types, which are generally original and change order, EAC, and original budgets, or whatever you happen to call them. As you can see in my example below, we actually called them something differently. But what it used to be is you used to have to load the budget type one at a time, and then it loaded a screen where you could go ahead and look at your actuals and rates and units, amounts, and make adjustments where needed or where they were editable. Well, now I'm happy to say that all those are displayed on the screen at one time. So we don't need to worry about that, loading in one at a time, wondering what the other values were set. Now they are all available at the same time to be able to view them, make edits, and go move forward with that. So very neat enhancements there for people in the budget area. Next, there are some enhancements around the resource management area. Now, we've always shown in the resource management, here's how many hours that you had budgeted over there. Over here in the resource planning, how many hours have you actually scheduled? And then it would show you the difference to kind of give you an idea. You've budgeted this much, you've scheduled this much, this is what you have left over to do. Now, the request has been, well, how about the actual hours that people have put against it? If we've put 8 against it and said that we've scheduled it, well, have they put those 8 hours yet? So we can see actually the total actual hours that are against it as well. Now, another area is that we have added in web apps is the whole employee utilization module has been moved over and made available inside of the web apps. So in some of the lookup screens, we have added some of the functionality that you've only had and actually never had before. We've added, so for example, I'm looking at this particular person, I'm looking at a particular period range. It's going to show me what are the goal hours, goal rate, and goal revenue for that area. So then I can look below, and I've cut off the bottom, but you can see the headers for the detailed information below. You can actually view that information and go forward from there. So we've added that there. You're going to see a common theme here, excuse me. We've added here for this project revenue and expense detail inquiry. We've also added some additional fields for the assignment summary by resource. We've actually added the planned hours. So we used to have the estimated hours and actual hours. We've now added the planned hours that you've put over in the resource assignment area. So you can see planned versus estimated versus actuals on the screen. Again, continuing to make these screens have more and more value to you based on great feedback from our customers and partners. We've added those same planned hours to the assignment summary by project task. So we've added a lot of different areas. If you've looked at before, if you haven't looked at it before, definitely take a look at the employee utilization and see just some of the great value you get at some of those reports that come with it. Now under the project analyst, again, just some of these are little tweaks, but some things make a lot of sense. For example, the billing details inquiry report, when it would show you the status, it would show you the single letter value, U or S, in this example here. Well, if it's going to put U, let's at least spell it out for people. Obviously, U means unbilled, but if you have the space, and we definitely have the space here, why not print out everything? So we've made it print out unbilled and selected based on the statuses that have been set up in the system. The next thing is that in the project net profit, the project net profit should print the account categories in the order. Now the sort order that we had before, it's using this the account category sort order. So if you're familiar with this account category screen, if you pull that up, you will see a sort order value. You can put the values in there, and then the information here will print out in that order. So again, now these account categories are printing out exactly how them set up inside of the account category maintenance. Next, we've had obviously this report showing you the task net profit for years. We had the original budget and variance. Well, there was a request to say this is great, but we'd like to add some more to that. We'd actually add another type of variance kind of idea, and we're calling it the remaining. The new remaining field is the original budget minus the project to date plus commitment amounts. So now you can view that information all on screen. Again, continuing to get great feedback and make the adjustments to the screens to really go ahead and provide people what they need. Now here's some other miscellaneous changes. We found out here on the general ledger quick query that we used to put the period entered value into it, which obviously we're a period to post type of company here, so having period to post was much more important. So if you were on the CU2, this is kind of a going off, but if you're in CO2 in the rich client, or if you're here on the latest web apps, it will go ahead and update this quick query to go ahead and show you the period to post information. Next is we've changed the order that the communicator displays messages. We always want to have the latest and greatest at the top, just as you have in your email client. You want those ones at the top so you know which ones you can start working on. And that's exactly what we've done here. We've changed it so the create date is the latest and greatest version of those items that have been put into your communicator inbox. Those messages are at the top, and you can view them and take action on them. Also, the menu has changed a little bit. You notice that we do have some new screens, employee maintenance, vendor maintenance, and customer maintenance, which we'll talk about in here in just a second. And the menu obviously has changed to go ahead and take into account that there is some new screens, and these are where these new screens are located. So what are those new web apps? Well, as said just a second ago, we now have the vendor maintenance screen. So what it'll allow you to do is it has pretty much most of the key features that you're going to need to set up a vendor, edit a vendor, potentially make some changes to them. That is available to you inside the vendor maintenance screen. We also have the same bit of functionality here under the customer maintenance screen, so I can go ahead and view, edit, and maybe add a new customer to the system as well. And last but not least, we also have for our payroll employees, now you can set up a brand new payroll employee inside of the system as well. Again, building off that idea that we need to have functionality remotely where we need to be able to do our work, whether we're remote this holiday or somewhere else. You can see we're continuing to invest in these web apps to add them. Now, as we've said before, the web apps are continuing to be added to. Our new, as of the December timeframe, we've gone to a new model where we're releasing basically once a month. Some of them will have hot fixes in them. Some will be a combination of hot fixes and new features. Obviously, here in December, we had a bunch of them, but we're kind of holding back to release and get them out the door. The idea going forward is as we get those new enhancement requests, we will review them, and as we can get them into the system, we can roll them out as needed. So you don't need to sit here and wait a whole nother year for so many really cool new features that we're going to do for web apps. As some of the small ones become available, we're going to start releasing them so that you don't have to wait to take advantage of web apps. So with that, I thank you so much for your time. Thanks for listening in. Hopefully you found this of value. Please note that the entire list of features that I just went through came from a document that is included with your web apps. So what are the new features, how do I set them up, everything is available with this system, with the release of the new web apps. So know that that document is there as well. With that, I thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.